going live on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. Okay, so let's talk about seed rotation today. It's quite an interesting concept of using seeds to balance your hormones. Some of you might be familiar with the concept of seed cycling, and some of you may not know about it at all, or you've heard of it, but you don't really know how to use it. So I want to talk to you a little bit about why it works, how to use it, even if you have sporadic periods, irregular periods, and if you are having, and then if you can't do seeds, there are some women who are allergic to seeds or doing, some kind of like AIP diet and can't do seeds. And so let's talk about all of those, and then post your questions, and then we'll get to your questions as well, because we typically get a lot of questions about seed rotation. So let me just start off by saying that when I first heard about seed rotation was probably 10 years ago. And I was in private practice, and I was using a lab for hormone testing for saliva. There was no urine back then that was really developed. So anyway, and that lab was kind enough to provide assistance from a naturopath as well. And what happened was I had a very difficult patient who had basically periods for like 20 days out of the month and super heavy. And so she wanted something really quick, but she also didn't want to do like birth control pills. And she was she wanted to go the natural way. So what I did was, when I got the results from the lab, it was pretty clear she had she had a lot of estrogen dominance, but she also had low progesterone. And so, and there was a lot of other markers that were really off. And I thought, why don't I just talk to the naturopath as well and see what she's got to say. And it was really interesting. She said, try seed rotation with her. And I thought, and I was like, what's that? So she explained. So I'll explain in a second how it works. And I was thinking, but basically the premise is that you're using these different seeds throughout the cycle of a woman. And if you're in perimenopause and menopause, you still do like 2 weeks and 2 weeks of different seeds. So, and I thought to myself, geez, I mean, herbs I understand, but like seeds are gonna make a difference in how your cycle works. And I thought that was kind of a bit of a wishful thinking. And, but that particular client was very open to trying it. And it took her like about 2 cycles to really feel the difference. But within 3 months, we managed to get her cycles completely under control. And she was not the most compliant client, meaning that she wasn't too willing to make too many dietary changes, which I always believe make always a big difference in regulating your cycle or any type of hormonal imbalances. So that was a good example how seed cycling can really work. So I started looking more into it, and that I was really encouraged to see that actually a lot of people can get a lot of great results. And actually, this is a method that's taught in the naturopathic schools. So it's not some, developed by fly-by-night naturopath or self-declared practitioner. It truly is a method that's been used for a long time. And I'm wondering how many of you here have had an experience with seed rotation for you to implement it, and what results did you get? Because I can tell you right now that from having done this for a very long time, and then building into my books and having written about it, and so many women have downloaded our seed rotation guide, that there's we get a lot of stories back hearing that generally it's the cycles get improved. So for example, if you have a super heavy cycle, it will basically normalize it down to like 3 to 5 days. Periods get a lot more regular. Women with hot flashes start reporting that hot flashes get a lot better. They sleep a lot better. Night sweats are not as severe, or they completely go away. Some mood changes, and the list goes on. And all of those are related to your hormones getting regulated. So what is I think most of our audience here just would want to also know why it works, right? So I want to just give you a little bit of the very basic science behind what is happening. So let me just start off with, if you are menstruating, and so you're still having a full cycle, right? Your first day of your period is your day 1. And then you typically go into day 14. That's when your ovulation is. And then from ovulation till your next period, right? That's the second part of your period. The first part of your period, from period to ovulation, is called the follicular phase. The second phase from ovulation until your next period is called the luteal phase. And so in the first phase, in the follicular phase, the dominant hormone is estrogen. In the second phase, the dominant hormone is progesterone. And so the interesting thing is about the seeds is that the first part of the seed rotation is to use as pumpkin seeds, but the star of the show really is your flaxseed. Why flaxseed? Is because flaxseed contains something called phytoestrogens, so it's naturally occurring estrogens. Those are not synthetic estrogens. Those are not, like found in a lot of plastics, for example. Those are just naturally occurring phytoestrogens. And what they do is that even though you might be estrogen, and let me just pause here for a second, like just a little caveat, because I know many of you know me as the estrogen dominance person. And so you might be thinking, why the hell is she talking about elevating my estrogen in my first part of the cycle when I'm already estrogen dominant? And the reason is that we want to do that because you do need good forms of estrogen in order to be a woman, in order to have your cycle, in order for your brain to work, for your bones to be strong, for your skin to be nice and healthy and plump, for you to have healthy boobs and a moist vagina. I mean, all of that depends on estrogen, sufficient levels of estrogen. And so Bia is here today. And so I'm going to do a shout out in a second. I'm going to talk about seed rotation. There's a great product that already, I'll mention that in a second. So the whole idea is that you don't want to be estrogen dominant. And so it doesn't mean that you don't want to be elevating estrogens in the first part. You do want those good estrogens. Estrogen dominance doesn't happen because you have too much estrogen. Estrogen dominance happens because the way you're breaking down those estrogens is highly unfavorable. It also happens when your balance of estrogen to progesterone is off. So by doing the seeds first part of your cycle is not going to hurt you, is only going to help you. And so that's one big about. What about, Victoria's asking, what about low estrogen? Absolutely. So flaxseed actually is a wonderful food and seed that helps you to elevate slightly your good estrogens, which will help you prevent a lot of the low estrogen symptoms. So for example, women, that's why I mentioned in the beginning that we have women who say, my hot flashes have disappeared ever since I started doing seed rotation. Why? Because she's just added flaxseed. Flaxseed contains phytoestrogens. Those estrogens, including estradiol, which is the most active form of estrogen, and that estrogen can really help with. So anything with low progesterone symptoms would include things like night sweats, hot flashes. It will be women who start experiencing disappearing periods, memory loss, digestive issues, bone density, so osteoporosis, osteopenia, right? And the list goes on. Is it safe with autoimmune disease? So if you're doing seed rotation, actually, let me come back to the questions in just a second. Let me just talk about, because there's questions about allergic to pumpkin seeds, etc. So let me circle back to that in just a second. So stay tuned. Let me just go on to the second phase. So second phase, we are then switching the seed rotation over to sesame seeds and sunflower seeds. Why is that? Because they contain high amounts of vitamin E and vitamin A, which interestingly, both of these vitamins are precursors for progesterone. So progesterone does not appear in foods the way you can find phytoestrogens are present, for example, things like soy. I'm not a fan of soy unless it's unprocessed soy. So like things like edamame, not your silky tofu, not your soy milk, right? Those are highly processed foods, but more natural forms of soy, as well as flaxseed, a lot of different herbs like Siberian rhubarb root, as well as donquai, which is Angelica sinensis, as well as red clover has got some, red raspberry leaf, all tend to be slightly phytoestrogenic. So those are all in that category. Now, what happens then we're moving on to the progesterone phase is you don't have progesterone found in any foods per se. However, what we can do is we can support our body by giving it the raw ingredients for it's not really the uterus, but it's what's called the luteum, corpus luteum, which is what creates what produces progesterone, right? And so in order for the corpus luteum to be enabled and nourished, there's certain vitamins that are necessary for that to happen. So vitamins and minerals. So one of it is zinc, vitamin A, vitamin E, which a lot of women can be deficient. Vitamin C are some of them. So what's interesting is that so sesame seeds as well as pumpkin seeds fill in that gap, and they also contain zinc. I forgot to say that. And so those are the really nice support, and that's why I think there's a reason why it's working. Now, is it working for Melanie? I'm going to talk about postmenopausal women in just a second. Let's talk about menopause. So I just gave you an example of women who are in full, still having their periods, right? So just to recap this super quickly, from the time of your period, the minute you get your period, you're doing flaxseed and pumpkin seed to support estrogen production. You do it until your ovulation. If you don't know if you're ovulating, just do it for 2 weeks or the half part of your cycle. If you know your cycle is 24 days, then just do it for 12 days, right? And then you switch. And then you switch for the rest 12 days or 14 days, however long is your cycle, you switch to sesame seeds and sunflower seeds to you support your progesterone production. So that's when you're menstruating. So there's questions now coming in. What about women who are postmenopausal? That's an easy one. The more complicated is women who have irregular periods. So let's talk about that in a second. But when it comes to postmenopausal, menopausal women, it's really pretty straightforward. You can start anytime. So if you have not had your period, right, then you basically start off any day, just do it for 2 weeks, and then switch over to the other set of the seeds that follow it. Some women like to do it with the moon. So historically, and for those women who are more connected to nature, and if you like that sort of stuff, if I was to restart my cycle, I would begin the historically how the herbal witches would do it, and I mean it in the best and caring way possible. We'll start off with a new moon. It's when your period starts. And so you might want to do it a new moon. So when it's like that very thin crescent, right? That's when you start off your progesterone boosting seeds. So when you have a full moon, this is when you are kind of like ovulating. And then after that, you switch over to the progesterone boosting ones again. So that's what postmenopausal women. We have women who sometimes have very irregular periods in our community. So the way to handle that is that you basically always start your flaxseed and pumpkin seed on the first day of your period. And then you continue on until for about 2 weeks or so, let it be 2 weeks, or whether it's going to be 10 days. And then switch over to the progesterone producing or progesterone supporting seeds. And so, it's going to take time to figure out like what is your cycle. If you're having totally irregular, very sporadic, all over the place, then you can just do for 5 days and 5 days until your cycle regulates. Now, I will say one thing though, is that I feel like, if your general life is a big mess, meaning you're super stressed out, you're living off caffeine, you're not sleeping very well, your diet is got a lot of things to it, a lot of wishful, it's got a lot of changes that should be made, you're highly inflamed and you feel it, there's a lot of stress in your life, just by depending on seed rotation to restore your cycle or to reduce the symptoms of PMS or reducing the hot flashes is a little bit of wishful thinking, and you might not get the results that you're after. So we have found in Hormones Balance is that when you combine it with an anti-inflammatory diet, and I talk about it in all my books, like Overcoming Estrogen Dominance is my latest book. You can get it on Amazon. It's always seed rotation seems to work a lot better. One thing you can do is download our seed rotation complete guide, and that teaches you also recipes and like how to do that by downloading like the exact formulas and a chart and recipes that you can actually incorporate it into doing that in incorporating that into like truffles and smoothies and stuff like that. But you don't have to. And so the other option is on Thursday, we're going to be talking about our partner, Bia. Really cool product. I have the phase 2 because I finished my phase 1. And that's going to be basically, those have seeds that are really pre-ground for you. And they also put in a couple of really super nice and clean. So like, for example, Blend 2, which is your progesterone phase, right? They've got here black sesame seeds, sunflowers, all organic sunflower seeds. They've got organic hemp seeds and a chamomile powder, and it tastes really wonderful. So if you don't feel like making your own seeds and grinding them up, you can always defer to Bia. And the email is going to be going out on Thursday, but also look out for it on social media. We're going to make a couple of posts, and you can save $5 per bag on that. So what about those of you who struggle with, like Victoria is, for example, asking, is it safe for autoimmune disease? So it is safe per se. The only issue is that if you are experiencing some digestive issues and you know that seeds are going to make it worse, then you clearly do not want to use seed rotation. There's other methods, and I talk about in a complete guide that you can download on how to change it to supplements, the supplements you can use in order to compensate for not using seeds. So if you, and there's somebody else was asking about, what about if you're allergic to pumpkin seeds? Well, one thing you can try is that really the star of the show in the first part of your cycle is a flaxseed. And so because of the estrogenic value, and so, you can just avoid pumpkin seeds and then just do just do flaxseed and see whether that helps you. How much of seeds how much to eat? So let's talk about that. So the recommended dose is 1 tablespoon of ground seeds each. So 1 tablespoon of flaxseed, 1 tablespoon of pumpkin seed, and the same thing goes for 1 tablespoon each for sesame seeds and sunflower seeds. I highly recommend for you to freshly grind them or have them like for a couple of weeks in your fridge, just because they get oxidized pretty easily. And I highly recommend not to purchase flax meal, which is already pre-ground flaxseed. Flaxseed is then famously fast to oxidize, and you just don't know how long it's been on the shelf. Most of them, flax meal is sold on the regular shelves without being refrigerated. So you're not getting the most potent kind of a seed, from the store. So it doesn't take very much time and effort to grind up your own. I have a dedicated grinder for like seeds as well as spices. If you have coffee, I don't drink coffee, but if you have coffee at home and use a grinder, use a different one, because coffee just takes over everything. Everything is gonna smell like that. So like of coffee. There's a question about flaxseed oil. Let's pop that. So that's a good question. And the answer is flaxseed oil has got its own benefits of like omega-3. However, it doesn't have the phytoestrogenic properties. So the phytoestrogens are found as what's called lignans, and that's found in the fiber of a flaxseed. So if you were looking for elevating your estrogen levels, then doing flaxseed is not going to cut it. I'm just gonna go over to questions on Instagram. So I think I've already answered the pumpkin question. Okay. So who here has tried it and has worked for you? I'm curious. Okay, so somebody's asking, in case of uterine fibroids, do you recommend seed rotation 2 teaspoons throughout the cycle? Thank you. Yeah, you can. Yeah, so uterine fibroids are highly correlated with estrogen dominance, and so it's a really good idea to address your estrogen dominance in the first place. And so I would not just do seed rotation to address uterine fibroids. In my book, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, there's a whole chapter about addressing fibroids, and there are specific enzymes like netozymes, serotoninase that are there to reduce fibroids, plus combining it with a really clean diet, anti-inflammatory diet. I will go in that direction. You can do flaxseed, however, like I said, flaxseed on its own doesn't It doesn't, cause estrogen dominance. Now, having said that, I'll just do one other little caveat here, because that's the interesting thing about food and herbs, right? Is that, you know, it works for most people a certain way, but there's always like a sliver of people who have the opposite reaction. So let me give you an example with flaxseed. You've got to listen to your body. So, for example, when I first started introducing flaxseed, a lot of promoting flaxseed and seed rotation, a lot of women started doing it, and there was a subsegment of women, and here I'm talking about like maybe 1 out of 20, who had the opposite reaction, meaning by incorporating flaxseed, instead of feeling better, her boobs now were a lot more tender, her period was a lot heavier, right? And the minute she stopped it, all that went away. So clearly flaxseed was causing it. Why? Well, I dove into a lot of research, and what I have found is that in order for the lignin, so remember that's in the flaxseed, the lignans are the phytonutrients, right? It needs to be converted to estrogen through the work of in your microbiome, and it's the gut bacteria that converts. Actually, if you think about it, the gut bacteria goes so many different functions, and that's one of them. It converts them to estrogen. Now, for women who have generally pretty poor digestive flora and might lack that particular bacterium, they do not convert that very well. And so flaxseed actually does not get converted. And there must be creating some adverse reaction. And so in this case, like if it's not working for you, then simply do not use it, because that's, it just defeats the purpose. There's a saying in nutrition we have, one person's food is another person's poison. So it's something that it's all about bioindividuality. Your microbiome is different from mine. I'm genetically different from you. And so we need to be respecting that. Olga is saying, I'm suffering with short luteal phase down to 10 days and recently hot flashes. Will this help me? Possibly, Olga. You can definitely try the seed rotation. If it doesn't work for you, I would also incorporate vitamin C during that time. When COVID first struck us, I went up with my vitamin C dose, and vitamin C has actually helped me prolong my luteal phase. It stopped working, unfortunately. And then that was like 2 years ago, and then it stopped working for me. I'm like deep into my perimenopause now. And so I ended up having to use progesterone, like topical progesterone. We have a nice product in our store called Progest Pure that's oil-based. And so that's something that you might end up using if seed rotation alone is not helping you. But, I'm always a fan of trying something gentle and as natural as possible before you go into bioidentical hormones. Black or white sesame seeds, does it matter? No, it does not. Great question. Do you have a link to the packet? So we just posted the link to the BIA packet. So they have 2. I finished one and I threw it away. Sorry about that. So we have phase 1 and phase 2. The phase 1 will have the pumpkin seed, flaxseed combo. It's just super convenient. Like if you don't want to be bothered with grinding and stuff, it's already done for you. And it comes with like nice schematics, and so you can like mark when it's your day and stuff like that. Look out for it. It's coming out on Thursday. We're going to be releasing that on social media. And if you are sign up to our mailing list, then we are passing on the discount to you guys there as well. Okay. All right. I think we're good for now. I hope this is helpful, you guys. I think this is just a really wonderful, yet another tool in your toolbox. So think about it a little bit like, when you have a handyman coming to your house, right? It's got all these different tools and like a whole belt of tools that is just filled up with things. And depending on what he or she needs, the tool is going to be brought out and used effectively, right? And so to solve a problem. So I feel like flaxseed seed rotation is not the answer for everything, but it is definitely a tool in your toolbox, something to consider, trying. And if it doesn't work for you, go deeper. There's a lot of resources we have on our website, hormonesbalance.com. In my book, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, you can easily tap into and help yourself that way. Okay. I hope this is helpful. Have a great week ahead of you, everybody. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.